Should you fund your trust now or should you wait until after death? In today's video, we are going to talk about what does it mean to fund a trust? What are the pros and cons of funding that trust during life or after death? And then lastly, and I think incredibly importantly, is what is a danger that can happen where you end up not funding your trust at all? Okay, let's get started. So what does it mean to fund a trust? Well, essentially what that means, and largely we are talking about revocable living trusts here. What it means to fund a trust is to transfer ownership from your ownership into the ownership of the trust. Now keep in mind with a revocable living trust, and I've done videos on this, you still retain control, you still retain ownership, but it is in the name of this revocable living trust. You have effectively funded the trust. And anything that you go and retitle into the name of the trust, you are funding the trust with. Okay, so that's what it means to fund the trust. It just means to retitle assets in the name of the trust. So now the question becomes, should I do this while I'm alive or should I do this after death? And again, we've spent some time talking about this in videos, but the reason that some people might choose to do this and retitle their assets while they are alive is when you do that, it does a couple of things. So one, it avoids the probate process, which can be pretty important for some, maybe not important for others. There's costs associated with probate, there's time associated with probate, and there's public information associated with probate. So skipping probate skips those pieces. Another important component of funding your trust during your life is if you have any incapacity planning inside of the trust, that may be helpful versus just a regular account. It's not going to have those same features. And so some of the reasons you might have set up a trust to skip the probate process, to handle incapacity planning, you wouldn't really get those if you funded it after death. Now keep in mind, what does it mean to fund it after death? It means you have a provision in your pour over will that says, hey, we want the money to flow into the trust after we die. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, when do you read the will? You read it during probate. So by definition, that your estate is being probated, so you are going to be subject to public information. It's going to be the time and it's going to be the cost of the attorneys. And so while not the end of the world, your trust will still get funded. There are some of those components that you really want to think about when it comes to doing it during life and doing it after death. However, I've had conversations where people just said, hey, this isn't going to be for my benefit anyways. I don't want to go through the hassle of retitling my assets as long as it's going to eventually happen. Okay, well, what's the real danger? The real danger is number 3, which is, well, what can happen where the trust doesn't get funded at all? Now, I've seen this where the way this happens is it has no function of, did we fund it during life? Did we fund it during death? But sometimes you have people that set up a will, okay? Now, maybe they set up a will a while ago, and then they hear about trust planning, and then they go set up independently a trust. Now, when you're first thinking about that, they go, okay, well, we have a will and we have a trust, so this seems fine. Well, the challenge becomes if assets are not retitled in the name of the trust and your will was done before your trust, your will isn't going to reference the trust in your documents. It's not going to have these pour over provisions that leads your assets into the trust after your death. And so it's important to have your documents coordinated where they're working together. And so what's the point here is whether you're funding it during life or funding it during death, there are definite pros and cons of each. Most importantly, make sure it gets funded, period, with a coordinated estate plan. So get with your estate attorney, get with your financial advisor, and make sure everything's in order. Hope you found this helpful. And as always, thanks for investing your time with the Personal CFO.